Hey guys, it's Bailey. Today we're going to be talking about a third grade social studies lesson that talks about types of government. So let's get started. So for this lesson, we are using the Alabama Course of Study Standard 10, which recognizes functions of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. And we're also using the standard defining governmental systems, including democracy, monarchy, and dictatorship. For the social studies national standards, we're using standard 6, which is power, authority, and governance. How are power, authority, and governments alike and different across groups and nations? So that's what we're going to be looking at today, the different types of governments across the different nations. So we will be using technology in this lesson. We'll be using the smartboard and the Elmo that is in the classroom. As you can see, I'm not in a classroom, and I don't have those things to use today, but we're just going to describe how the lesson would go if we were in a classroom. So let's start out with our exploration phase. So our objective for this phase is that students will be able to discuss what they know about government and the different types of governments. So what kind of materials are you going to need during this exploration phase? Well, you're going to need, I have a type of government video which is attached at the bottom of this lesson plan. And there's the website is in the references. You're going to need paper and you're going to need pencils. So to start this exploration phase, the teacher will begin by recalling the students' information on what government is. You'll ask students, what do they think government is? What comes to mind when they think about the government? And we'll use prior knowledge to discuss this. Then while you're going to discuss this as a group and talk about what government is. Then we'll talk about that there's different types of governments. Some students may not realize this. Some students may not even know that there are types of governments. And then what we're going to do is, from the video that I showed, it's going to show the different types of governments. And the students are going to use the paper to make a flip book that contains the different types of governments. So on one page it'll have democracy, one page it'll have monarchy, and so there is an example shown in the reference of the this lesson plan. And the assessment for this phase will be the students' ability to define the government that we talked about during the discussion in the flip books that they made that have the definitions of the different types of governments. So this also shows their participation while during the discussion, that they listened after we talked about the video, and that they paid attention during the video too. So our next phase is the invention phase. And so for this phase, the objectives will be students will be able to define the types of government through drawings. So what are you going to need? Well, the students are going to need their flip book that they created. They're also going to need a pencil, and they're going to need the types of government picture that it is also attached at the end of this lesson plan. So you'll start by telling your students that today we're learning about the different types of governments. You've already discussed this in your exploration phase, but you're just going to, as you're moving to this next phase, you're just going to restate that. Then you're going to talk to them about the rationale. Why are we learning this? So you study types of governments because it is important for us to understand that not all governments are the same, and that many countries operate in different ways. And so even though these students are in third grade and they're younger, it's still important to let students know that there are different types of governments, and that people operate in different ways across the country and the world. So you'll start this phase by redefining the different types of government that you've learned from the video and that the kids wrote down in their flip book. You want this to be on the forefront of their minds so that they remember that there are different types of governments and the definitions. So the way that you're going to recall this is the picture that is at the end of this lesson plan. It has a visible representation of the different types of governments using gummy bears, which is really cool because kids I've learned that kids, they relate really well to food, which a lot of people do, but it's really nice to use examples that the kids can relate to. So this picture uses gummy bears to set up the different types of governments. Students will after we've done this, they will, and showed them the picture, they will use the definitions in their flip book to draw a picture of each type of government on the correct page of their flip book. So, for example, they go to the dictatorship page in their flip book and they draw a picture of what they think a dictatorship would look like. You could also, as we saw using the picture, you could also break students up into to groups and let them use gummy bears to create their the picture of what the type of government it is instead of drawing it in their book. But then after the students have drawn their types of government in their flip book, they will turn to a partner and talk about their drawing activities and why they drew the picture that they did in their book. Next, we will close the invention phase by having students review the different types of governments that they have learned about in the lesson. They'll talk about the types of government in a whole group. You'll do this together in a whole group. And the teacher will ask the students what they learned from this lesson that they did not know before. So the assessment for this invention phase is that the students will be assessed on the drawings that they created in their flip books to determine if they understood the different types of governments. So if you decided to use, instead of having the students draw and use the gummy bears, you would the teacher would walk around and you could use a checklist and see if the students are comprehending using the gummy bears to act out the different types of governments. So let's move on to the expansion phase. So the objective in the expansion phase is students will be able to act out a type of government. So what materials do you need? Well, the students need their flip book as a reference back to the different types of governments. Students need creativity and the types of government slips of paper, which is attached at the bottom of the lesson plan. And basically what it is you have slips of paper that have the different types of government on it that you give to the students for them to act out. So the procedures. Students will be divided into groups because you want the students to be able to work together to act out these different types of governments. Each group will be giving a type of government. That's where the type of government slips of paper come in, where you give each group a type of government. The groups will then work together to act out the type of government, and then as you'll let the class guess what type of government that the group is acting out, and will continue until all groups have had the opportunity to act out their government. And then for the assessment, students will be assessed on their ability to work together and creatively act out and correctly act out the type of government that they were given. And there's a rubric at the bottom of the lesson plan for you to be able to grade the students' work on acting out the type of government. So in each lesson there needs to be modifications and something that we talk about that is very prominent in classes today, or especially English language learners. So you can, to make this lesson easier for not just English language learners but for students who have special needs, you can establish their prior knowledge by giving them a reference sheet before you begin the lesson that describes the different types of governments. That way they get a head start on looking at the governments and they're not as overwhelmed when you start talking about them while teaching. You can also, during the invention phase, you can let them use their reference sheet to help draw the different types of government in the flip book, the reference sheet that you gave them ahead of time. It can have pictures on it for them to be able to understand the different types of governments. It can have the definitions wrote on it. Also, during the expansion phase, you can, while they're acting out their group, acting out the type of government with their group, they can use the materials that they've used throughout the lesson to help them contribute to the group demonstration. You can make sure that they get put in a group with people who are willing to help them, like create ideas and contribute to the lesson. And just as everyone else, for their final assessment, they can use their flip book. But you could, as stated above, if say the students aren't, I talked about using the gummy bears. Say the students aren't capable of drawing, they could use the gummy bears to act out as a modification. So I hope that you enjoyed this lesson.